Configuration-wise, this is an example of the P or route reflector. Okay. So what do you do on your interfaces facing the PEs? You have your IP addresses, you enable OSPF, you enable MPLS with LDP. Same thing, both interfaces. On the loopback, you have your /32 OSPF. Okay. You enable OSPF, you enable BGP. Typically, you want to peer using loopback addresses with your PEs on the same AS. And now you have the new address family VPN v4 unicast. So that's where you exchange your communities with the route targets and the route distinguishers. Because this is a route reflector, you want to enable route reflector clients towards your PEs. At the MPLS level, you want to enable it, and you want to go to LDP and enable that, specify the loopback as well. On the PE, it's very similar. The differences are the VRF is required. Because at the PE, there's no connector CE, right? So there's no VRFs required. But on the PE, you do have connector CE, so you do want to have your VRFs. So VRFs, you have your route distinguishers, and you have your route targets as part of the address family IPv4 unicast. So you see this command here, layer 3 VPN only. That's a new command that's required for MPLS VPNs. So this is required for VPN v4 address family to be active. That means it's mandatory. You want to have layer 3 VPNs, you have to use this command under the VRF. So once you create the VRF on interface facing the CEs, you can attach it. You have an IP address, you can see here. So this link facing the CE, there's no OSPF required. There's no OSPF. OSPF is only used like within the MPLS network. On the port facing the P, you would enable IP addressing, OSPF, MPLS. You have your loopbacks, and you have your OSPF for within the MPLS network. So BGP, so this is AS200, you can see. So you have peerings within the MPLS network towards the route reflector. You see neighbor is 3333, and that uses address family VPN v4. You peer to it, you send your community. You also have your VRF, and you actually peer to the remote CE here. You can see now the remote AS number is 100 because you peer to the CE. This you just have address family IPv4 unicast, and you activate those. MPLS, same thing, enable it globally. When the LDP, enable it, specify a router ID. CE is simple because it's non-MPLS, normal routing, okay, normal BGP. You have your LAN subnets here. You have your WAN subnets typically. Your IP address, and you have your BGP AS number 100 here. You peer to the remote MPLS network. Okay. If you want to have the same AS numbers on both CEs, you need to set allow AS in. Best practices. Use redundant VPN v4 route reflectors to avoid the full mesh EBGP peers. Use peer groups to simplify configs on both your PRR and PE. This is an example of a peer group. Right? If it's like the loopback, it's common to both clients. You just want to specify it one time. Same for the remote AS. And you can just activate them under the VPN v4 address family. Utilize EBGP between the PE and the CE for dynamic routing, and use a unique CAS number if possible. Remember to add layer 3 VPN only under the VRF context. So implicit now is not supported, as I mentioned. If you're using third-party PE towards CXP, you need to make sure that explicit now is configured on the PE. If egress PE and the P are CX switches, you do not need to change it. Troubleshooting-wise, we recommend you to have a topology diagram ready with all the details, such as AS numbers, IP addressing, loopback IPs. So check your physical cabling and generate show tag required. So you want to troubleshoot the physical network first. So show LDP neighbor, make sure your unicast network works, make sure you can ping between the loopbacks and trace route. So fix those issues found first before you even begin any MPLS troubleshooting. So this is typically required because your MPLS is pretty complicated. So have those information ready. Same thing, your subnets on the CEs, you need to know as well. And if you need to mirror traffic and packet capture, the sample config. If requested, you can do diagnostics, your diagram for MPLS, or even debugs. Troubleshooting flow. This is the flow. So this is a summary. We'll go through them later. So basically, summarize, you want to check your configs are configured correctly. You want to check unicast routing between the PEs and the RRs. Check the LDP peerings, MPLS bindings. Check the MPLS table. Check the VP and V4 peering. Check peering between the PE and the CE. Check connectivity between the CEs. Check the VRF tables. At the ingress PE now for EBGP. Check the VP and V4 route, the egress. So you start at the ingress, and then you move on to the egress PE. You check the VP and V4, you check the VRF tables. Finally, check CE. I mentioned the sample config, so refer to that. Unicast routing. So on PE1, you want to check, make sure you see the loopbacks of your remote route reflectors and PEs. So if not seen, you want to make sure that OSPF is enabled and they are advertising loopbacks. Okay, so that's required in order for this to be populated in the routing table. Make sure the next hops are correct. LDP peering. So you can check whether the LDP neighbor, directly connected LDP neighbor, is up using this command. It should be up, and the interface should be correct. If you expect this IP, your route reflector, for example, through this interface, you should see it here. And you can also check the remote binding here. So on PE1, this is binding for the directly connected P, the route reflector, and this is the remote PE, you can see here. So there's a label. So that's send, that's outgoing label towards the P. Okay. So if this is not seen, for example, this remote PE binding not seen, make sure the remote PE has LDP established. If it's not established, you will not see this. Check the MPLS forwarding table. Show MPLS forwarding. So you can see both VPN v4 and the PE. Okay. So this is the loopback, again, loopback. Outgoing label, so this is the LDP. And VPN v4, you can see the BGP. And it's the VRF of the subnet, next hop, and outgoing label. So this is the VPN v4 label, this is the LDP label. Okay, you want to check VPN v4 peering between the PE and RR. You can use this command, show BGP VPN v4 unicast neighbors. Make sure they're established. Make sure the source and destination IPs are correct based on loopback and they're established. On the PE, you want to verify your EBGP peering to the CE. This is the command to be used. You used to have the VRF with IPv4. So you can see here, right, your local AS and your remote AS numbers, because they're supposed to be different, because it's between PE and CE. Make sure it's established. On the CE, you want to make sure you can ping to the remote CE, the WAN address and the LAN address to verify connectivity. Okay. At the ingress PE, this is how you check for EBGP routes. You can show IP RIP for that VRF. You can see the remote route from the PE. So that's the next hop. PE address, but the route from the directly connected CE is connected to PE1. You can see here has this next hop. That's directly connected IP. So the RIP doesn't show the interface. If you do a show IP route, same information can be seen with the next hop interface. So next, You want to check VPN v4 routes at the egress PE. So we check the ingress, now we check the egress. You can show BGP VPN v4 unicast to look at the subnets and the next hops. So you can see here, this is the directly connected CE address subnet. There's no VPN v4 next hop here because it's from the VPN v4 table. But if you do the show IP rib, you can see that it has an next hop. If you show the IP routing table, you can see the interface as well. So that's the same information in multiple places. You want to check the CE routing table. So CE1, you want to make sure you can see the remote CE subnet, the PE, the CE WAN subnet, or even the LAN subnet. So this is more important. Right? So then that you can make sure that the clients on the LAN side can reach each other.